The pride of the Galactic Council, Research Station Haven 12, had never been so silent. Dr. Zixtal's bioluminescent patches pulsed an anxious purple as they watched their most advanced quantum containment field begin to tear itself apart. The usually bustling central control room, with its sweeping crystalline windows and holographic displays, now felt like a tomb. Processing complete, the station's AI announced, its usually melodic voice carrying an unfamiliar edge of concern. Calculation set 2749 has failed to produce a viable solution. Dr. Zixtal's inner membranes flickered in frustration. They had gathered the finest minds in the galaxy, beings who could perform quantum calculations in their sleep. Yet the problem before them defied all logic. The containment field's degradation pattern shouldn't have been possible, let alone accelerating. How long? They asked, their voice a harmonic whisper. At current degradation rates, total containment failure in 48 standard hours, the AI responded. The dark matter research chamber will be compromised in 36 hours. Recommended course of action: immediate evacuation. The words sent ripples of fear through the assembled researchers. 300 of the galaxy's brightest minds would have to abandon their life's work. Worse, the station's location in the outer rim meant that even with immediate evacuation, at least 50 personnel would still be aboard when the field failed. There must be a solution, Dr. Zixtal insisted, their crystalline display flooding with equations. We are Aetherian. We do not accept failure. With respect, Doctor, junior researcher Nexai spoke up, their youth-bright tentacles trembling. We have tried every approved approach in the Council database. Then we must try unapproved approaches, Dr. Zixtal snapped, immediately regretting their harsh tone, as the junior researcher's bioluminescence dimmed in shame. The room fell silent again, save for the steady pulse of warning indicators. Then Nexai spoke again, their voice barely a whisper. There are stories from the outer colonies about a species that specializes in impossible situations. Dr. Zixtal's secondary eyes focused on the young researcher. Explain. They're called humans, Nixie continued, gaining confidence. They evolved on a Class 12 death world. Their entire history is solving problems that should have killed them. The word Deathworld sent a collective shudder through the room. Every species in the Council had evolved on worlds rated between Class 1 and Class 4. Stable, peaceful environments that fostered intelligence and cooperation. But Class 12, that was almost theoretical. Impossible, senior researcher Vextal interjected. No sapient species could evolve in such conditions. The evolutionary pressure alone would create beings that thrive on solving the impossible, Nixie finished. I've studied the reports. Their planet tries to kill them daily, yet they've not only survived but built a civilization. They call their homeworld Earth. Dr. Zixtal watched another warning light join the symphony of failure before them. Their species prided itself on perfect problem-solving, on finding the elegant solution to any challenge. But there was nothing elegant about their current situation. Show me these reports, they ordered. The holographic display filled with images that defied belief, beings that looked almost primitive, yet had mastered space travel, a species that deliberately sought out danger, that treated radiation warnings as suggestions, that had turned their harsh evolution into a tool. The Council will never approve, Vextal warned. The Council isn't here, Dr. Zixtal responded, making a decision that would change the galaxy. And we're out of options. Send the call. Find me a human. As the message was transmitted, Dr. Zixtal wondered if they had just saved Haven 12, or doomed it to an even more spectacular destruction. Either way, they were about to learn why the galaxy's most dangerous species might also be its greatest. The emergency council chamber erupted in chaos when Dr. Zixtal announced their decision. The holographic representatives of 12 species flickered with agitation, their voices blending into a cacophony of protest. "Have you lost your neural functions?" demanded the sylphid representative, their gaseous form swirling in distress. "Bringing a Deathworlder onto our most advanced research station." With all due respect, Dr. Sixtel's voice cut through the noise. "We are 28 hours from catastrophic failure. The time for debate has passed." The chamber fell silent as the station's AI projected the latest containment field readings. The numbers told a story that none could dispute. Haven 12 was running out of time. "The human has already been contacted," Dr. Sixtel continued. Their response was immediate. The memory of that response still sent shivers through their neural pathways. The human had laughed. Actually laughed when told of their crisis. "Sounds like fun," she had said, as if imminent death was an entertainment option. Catherine Morrison, the AI, displayed the human's file. Engineering specialist from their Space Corps. Notable achievements include. The list that followed made several council members' bioluminescence fade to almost nothing. Emergency reactor containment on Mars. Gravity drive repair during active core breach. Deep space rescue under plasma storm conditions. "Those records cannot be accurate," the mechanoid representative's voice crackled. "No organic being could survive such conditions." A new voice joined the discussion, rough, confident, and entirely too cheerful for the situation. "You'd be surprised what we can survive." The council chamber's security protocols had been bypassed. Standing in the holographic space was a figure that made every evolutionary instinct in Dr. Sixtel scream predator. Catherine Morrison wore what she called standard work clothes, heavy boots, reinforced fabric covering powerful muscles, and a utility belt that seemed to contain everything from ancient physical tools to modern tech. Kate Morrison, reporting for duty, she grinned, showing far too many teeth. "Your station eye was kind enough to patch me in. Hope you don't mind." "Impossible," the sylphid representative whispered. "Our security protocols. We're pretty good," Kate nodded appreciatively. "But you know what they say about necessity and invention. Speaking of which, that containment field, it's degrading faster than your models show." She gestured, and new data flooded the display. Dr. Sixtel's primary heart nearly stopped. She was right. The human had analyzed their crisis and found details they'd missed, all while casually breaking through their security. "How did you?" Dr. Sixtel began. Later, Kate cut them off, her expression shifting from amused to focused with predatory speed. "Right now, you've got about 22 hours, not 28. My ship will dock in 40 minutes. Have your team ready for some unconventional solutions." "The Council has not approved this intervention," the mechanoid representative protested. Kate's laugh echoed through the chamber again. "With all due respect to this fine council, the laws of physics don't care about approval. That containment field is failing in new and exciting ways, and you called me because you need someone who's good at impossible problems. So either vote to let your station blow up, or let me do my job." She turned to Dr. Sixtel, her eyes showing an intelligence that belied her species' primitive reputation. "Doctor, I'll need full access to your systems and your best engineers. The kind who won't faint when I start breaking physics." Before anyone could respond, she vanished from the holographic space, leaving behind a data package that made the AI stutter in surprise. Initial analysis and proposed solutions. The AI translated. Warning: 90% of suggested methods violate standard safety protocols. Dr. Sixtel felt their bioluminescence pulse with something between terror and hope. "Prepare for the human's arrival," they ordered. And may the voice. Dr. Sixtel had witnessed many impossible things since the crisis began, but nothing prepared them for watching Kate Morrison work. The human had been on Haven 12 for exactly 27 minutes, and she'd already violated 43 safety protocols, 16 engineering principles, and the laws of probability. "This is madness," senior researcher Vextall whispered, their luminescence flickering with stress as Kate climbed into a maintenance shaft rated for deadly radiation levels. "The human will kill herself." Actually, Kate's voice echoed through the shaft, accompanied by the alarming sound of metal being forcibly rearranged. "These radiation levels are pretty mild compared to some places I've worked. Did emergency repair on a solar station once. Now that was spicy." The engineering team watched in horror as their monitoring systems showed her manually rewiring power conduits that should have vaporized organic matter on contact. She dismissed their environmental suit as too bulky, instead wearing only a light protective vest that she called good enough. "But our simulations show," the station's AI began. "Your simulations are wrong," Kate interrupted, emerging from the shaft with her hair slightly singed, but otherwise unharmed. "They're based on perfect theoretical models. Reality's messier." She pulled out an ancient physical tool, a wrench, she called it, and started adjusting a quantum harmonizer with the precision of a surgery drone. "Impossible," Dr. Sixtel breathed. "That device requires molecular-level calibration." "Nah, it just needs a good whack right. Here." The harmonizer's warning lights shifted from red to green. "Sometimes the old ways work best. Speaking of which, who wants to help me hotwire your backup generator?" The phrase didn't translate well, but the implication sent waves of terror through the alien staff. Kate had already drained 3 stimulant packs that should have stopped an Aetherian's heart, used experimental equipment in ways that made their designers file formal protests, and now proposed something that made the station's AI actually stutter. "More caffeine," she demanded, tossing an empty pack aside. "And get me access to the primary coolant system. We're gonna try something fun." "Define fun?" Dr. Sixtel asked, already dreading the answer. Kate's grin widened as she pulled up the station's schematics, her eyes gleaming with what the Aetherians were learning to recognize as human inspiration, a state terrifyingly close to madness. "See, your coolant system's running at perfect efficiency. That's the problem. We need to create some controlled chaos in the flow. Think of it like..." She paused, looking for a comparison they'd understand. "Like quantum uncertainty, but for engineering." "That is not a valid engineering principle," the AI protested. "Sure it is. On Earth, we call it percussive maintenance and jury rigging. Speaking of which," she reached for her tool belt. The next few minutes would later be classified as too disturbing for junior engineers to witness. Kate Morrison, armed with primitive tools and what she called good old human intuition, proceeded to break every rule of proper engineering. She rerouted systems that shouldn't be connected, created feedback loops that somehow stabilized instead of exploding, and at one point used her own body as a conductor to bridge a power gap. "There," she announced triumphantly, her hair standing on end from electrical discharge. "That should buy us another 8 hours. Now, who's ready to really start breaking some rules?" Dr. Sixtel watched their most advanced diagnostic systems try to make sense of what the human had done. According to every known law of physics, none of it should work, yet the containment field's degradation had slowed significantly. "How?" they finally asked. "How do you do these things?" Kate shrugged, already moving toward her next impossible task. "Simple. While you folks were evolving to solve problems with pure logic, we were evolving to survive by any means necessary. Sometimes that means thinking outside the box." She paused, then added with a wink, "Sometimes it means setting the box on fire and using the ashes to fix the problem." The emergency control room of Haven 12 had transformed into what Kate Morrison called a war room, though Dr. Sixtel failed to see the military applications of empty stimulant packs and holographic displays covered in incomprehensible human notations. "All right, here's the situation," Kate announced. her voice hoarse from 30 hours without sleep. Our patches are holding. But the core problem remains. The quantum matrix is misaligned, and it's getting worse. She paused to drain another stimulant pack, her fifth in the past hour. So, we're going to do something incredibly stupid. The room fell silent. Given what the human considered normal operations, the concept of incredibly stupid sent shivers through every alien present. "I'm going inside the containment chamber," Kate declared, pulling up a three-dimensional model of the chamber's interior. "Manual realignment is the only option left." "That's not stupid," Nixie said, their bioluminescence pulsing with confusion. "That's suicide." Kate's laugh echoed off the crystal walls. "There's a difference. Look, the chamber's environment is hostile, but it's not impossible. Radiation's high, but I've had worse. Gravity fluctuations are nasty, but nothing compared to deep space rescue work. Temperature's a problem. But," she shrugged, "I'm from Minnesota. We consider anything above absolute zero shorts weather." "You cannot be serious," Dr. Zixtal interjected, their professional calm finally cracking. "The chamber will kill you." "Maybe," Kate admitted, and for the first time, they saw something beyond her perpetual confidence. A deep, thoughtful understanding of the risks. "But that's kind of our thing, you know. Humans, I mean. We've got this long history of looking at certain death and saying, yeah, but what if we tried anyway?" She pulled up an image that made several aliens recoil, a human structure engulfed in flames, and tiny figures running toward it. "See that? That's my great-grandfather. He was something called a firefighter. When things were burning, when everyone else was running away, he and his team ran in. Not because they were crazy, but because someone needed help." The image changed to show humans in primitive vessels on heaving waves. Coast Guard, North Atlantic. 100-foot waves, hurricane conditions, but they launched anyway. Because someone needed help. More images followed. Humans descending into collapsing mines, flying into storms to evacuate the sick, standing before tanks with nothing but conviction. "This is your species' history?" Dr. Zixtal asked, their scientific curiosity overriding their horror. "You consistently move toward danger." "Not just move toward it," Kate corrected, her eyes fixed on the containment chamber schematics. "We learn to calculate the risks, to improve our odds, to find ways through the impossible. Earth taught us that a long time ago. Either adapt and overcome, or die. We chose to adapt." She began laying out her plan, and despite their initial terror, the alien scientists found themselves drawn into her methodology. Every risk was calculated, every contingency considered. What had seemed like reckless abandon was revealed as the product of a mind forged by millions of years of survival against impossible odds. "The real question," Kate concluded, "isn't whether I'll try. It's whether you'll help me succeed." Dr. Zixtal looked at their team, saw the same realization dawning in their luminescence. They had called a Deathworlder expecting a primitive savior. Instead, they had found something far more remarkable. A species that had turned their harsh evolution into a tool for achieving the impossible. "When do we begin?" they asked. Kate's grin returned, fierce and determined. "Right now. And Doc, thanks for understanding. Most species just think we're crazy." "Perhaps," Dr. Zixtal replied, their own luminescence brightening with new purpose. "We are learning that sometimes crazy is exactly what the universe requires." The containment chamber's access door hissed open, releasing a wave of superheated air that made the observation deck's crystal windows crackle. Dr. Zixtal watched as Kate Morrison made her final preparations, her movements sharp and focused despite nearly 40 hours without real sleep. "Remember," Kate said, checking the seals on her minimalist protection suit, "if things go sideways, don't try to save me. Focus on station containment." "Define sideways," Nixie asked, their tentacles writhing with anxiety. Kate's laugh echoed through the chamber. Trust me, you'll know. Starting entry sequence now. The humans stepped into the chamber, and every alien present felt their evolution deep terror response trigger. The space before them defied natural law. Quantum fluctuations made reality itself shiver, while gravitational eddies twisted light into impossible shapes. Environmental systems critical. The AI announced. Warning. Human biosigns showing extreme stress. Tell me something I don't know, Kate grunted, making her way across the chamber floor. Each step looked like a battle against physics itself. Hey, Doc, ever wonder why humans love dancing? Dr. Zixtal blinked their secondary eyes in confusion. This hardly seems the time for cultural discussion. Actually, Kate said, twisting away from a sudden gravitational surge, it's perfect. See, dancing is all about reading patterns, moving with them instead of fighting them. And right now, she spun through a space where gravity reversed, using the movement to propel herself toward the central matrix. I'm dancing with your chamber. The aliens watched in stunned silence as Kate Morrison turned the most dangerous space in the station into a performance arena. She flowed around energy surges like they were dance partners, used gravitational shifts to her advantage, and somehow maintained her course toward the matrix despite reality itself working against her. Then everything went wrong. The matrix pulsed, releasing a wave of quantum instability that should have torn any living being apart. The aliens froze, their bodies locked in instinctive terror response. But Kate Morrison moved. Rerouting power, she shouted, her voice strained but alive. Doc, I need a feedback loop through secondary systems. That would overload the entire power grid, Dr. Zixtal protested. Exactly. Trust me. Those two words, coming from a species that had evolved on a world that tried to kill them daily, somehow made perfect sense. Dr. Zixtal's fingers flew across the controls, breaking every safety protocol they'd ever known. Kate had reached the matrix core, her body literally glowing from the energy surrounding her. Fun fact about humans, she gasped, pulling tools from her belt. We're pretty good conductors, especially when we're sweating this much. Before anyone could stop her, she jammed her arms into the matrix housing, using her own body to bridge a gap in the power flow. The screens exploded with warnings as enough energy to power a small city coursed through the human's body. Catherine Morrison, the AI's voice actually cracked. Your current actions are resulting in fatal levels of exposure. Probably, Kate agreed through gritted teeth. But they're also working. Matrix realignment at 40%. 60. Come on, you beautiful disaster, work with me here. The chamber filled with light as reality itself seemed to hiccup. For one terrible moment, Dr. Zixtal thought they'd lost her. Then the readings stabilized, the warnings fell silent, and there was Kate Morrison, somehow still standing, her hair literally smoking, but a triumphant grin on her face. Matrix realigned, she announced, swaying slightly. Containment field stabilizing. Now, if nobody minds, I'm going to pass out for a bit. Wake me if the universe starts ending again. As the human collapsed, Dr. Zixtal realized they'd just witnessed something beyond their understanding. A being who didn't just survive the impossible, but made it bow to their will through sheer determined audacity. The medical bay's soft blue light cast gentle shadows across Kate Morrison's sleeping form. According to every medical scanner in Haven 12's considerable arsenal, she should be dead. Instead, she was snoring quietly, her body already repairing damage that would have vaporized most species. Fascinating, Dr. Zixtal murmured, their attention split between the humans' medical readings and the historical archives they'd been obsessively studying for the past 12 hours. Simply fascinating. What have you found? Nixie asked, bringing another data crystal to add to the growing collection around the research station. Everything, Dr. Zixtel replied, their bioluminescence pulsing with excitement. And nothing. Look at this, Earth's historical records. Their planet isn't just hostile. It's actively antagonistic to life as we know it. The holographic display filled with images that made Nixie's tentacles curl. Massive storms that could swallow cities, mountains that spewed liquid rock, temperatures that swung from freezing to boiling in the same geographic location. Yet they not only survived, Dr. Zixtel continued, they thrived. Every disaster became a lesson, every challenge an opportunity. When their world threw lightning at them, they didn't just hide. They learned to harness it. When the ground shook, they built stronger. When the waters rose, they learned to swim, then to sail. Like the Matrix chamber, Nixie realized. She didn't fight the energy fields directly. She danced with them, Dr. Zixtel finished. Because that's what her species has always done. Look at this. A new image appeared. Ancient humans with primitive tools, tracking creatures much larger than themselves. Persistence hunting, Dr. Zixtel explained. When they couldn't outfight their prey, they simply followed it until it collapsed from exhaustion. They turned their own endurance into a weapon. That's terrifying, Nixie admitted. No, it's beautiful, a hoarse voice interjected. Kate had woken up, her eyes still bright despite her ordeal. It's the story of how we learned our most important lesson. Adaptation beats raw power every time. She sat up, wincing slightly. Your medical equipment is amazing, by the way. On Earth, I'd be looking at months of recovery. Speaking of Earth, she nodded at the historical display. Found our highlight reel. Your species' history is remarkable, Dr. Zixtel said. Each disaster should have ended you. Instead, we got back up, dusted ourselves off, and said, okay, what did we learn? Kate grinned. It's not just physical either. Every time our world tried to kill us, we got a little smarter, a little more creative. You folks evolved perfect problem solving. Because your worlds were perfect. We evolved adaptive problem solving. Because our world never gave us the same problem twice. The medical bay's monitors beeped as Kate swung her legs off the bed, her movements already stronger. That's why the Matrix chamber worked. You saw chaos that needed to be controlled. I saw patterns that could be adapted to. Different evolution, different solutions. Dr. Zixtel's secondary eyes widened in understanding. Is that why you seem to enjoy the crisis? Because for your species, crisis is normal. Better, Kate said, standing up despite the medical eye's protests. Crisis is where we do our best work. It's in our DNA. When things get impossible, get creative. When the rules don't work, write new ones. When the path is blocked, make a new path. Dr. Zixtel finished, their own research finally making sense, even if it means becoming the path yourself. Now you're getting it, Kate laughed, then grimaced. Though maybe next time, we can find a solution that doesn't involve using me as a living conductor. That part wasn't fun, even by human standards. As the human began planning improvements to the station's systems, Dr. Zixtel made a final note in their research. Perhaps the most remarkable thing about humans is not that they survived their death world, but that it made them stronger. They are not despite their world, but because of it. Evolution's answer to the question, what happens when you never stop adapting? The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Assembly had never been so crowded. Representatives from 200 species packed, the crystalline tiers, their combined bioluminescence creating a spectacular light show against the ancient walls. Today's session had a single agenda, the Haven 12 incident. Dr. Zixtel stood at the speaker's podium, their normally pristine academic robes still showing scorch marks from the crisis. Behind them, A massive holographic display showed the station's current status. Fully operational, containment field at 100% stability. Honored representatives, they began, their voice carrying the weight of recent experience. I stand before you to challenge everything we think we know about human classification. The chamber erupted in murmurs as footage from Haven 12's security systems began playing. They watched Kate Morrison dance through impossible physics, use her own body as a circuit, and defy death with a smile. We have long classified humans as Deathworlders, Dr. Zixtel continued. We saw their harsh evolution as a disadvantage, their adaptability as chaos, their willingness to face danger as primitive. We were wrong. New images filled the display, Earth's history, but not the disasters they expected. Instead, they saw humans rising from each catastrophe stronger, smarter, more innovative. What we perceived as recklessness was actually calculated risk assessment born from millions of years of evolution. Where we see impossible obstacles, they see puzzles to be solved. Their death world didn't just make them strong, it made them creative. The mechanoid representative's lights flickered in disagreement. This is one isolated incident. Is it? A new voice cut through the chamber. Kate Morrison strode onto the speaking platform, her presence causing several representatives to instinctively back away. She'd refused to wear formal robes, instead appearing in her standard work clothes, tools still hanging from her belt. "Sorry I'm late," she announced, not looking sorry at all. "Had to fix your environmental system on the way in. Whoever designed it never heard of redundancy." Ha! Dr. Zixtel's bioluminescence flickered with what might have been amusement. "Representatives, I present Catherine Morrison, who will now demonstrate why human problem-solving is unique in the galaxy." Kate pulled out her tablet, and the chamber's ancient environmental display lit up with new information. "Your system was running at perfect efficiency," she explained, which meant it had no room for error. "I added some controlled chaos. Think of it as engineering antibodies. Now it can adapt to problems instead of just following programming." The technical representatives leaned forward, their initial fear forgotten, in the face of pure innovation. Kate continued, walking them through solutions that bordered on artistic in their creative application of scientific principles. "See, that's the thing about growing up on a death world," she said, her eyes scanning the chamber. "You learn that perfect systems break under pressure. Adaptive systems bend and get stronger. We're not just survivors, we're innovation under pressure made flesh." Dr. Zixtel stepped forward again. "I propose a new classification for humans, not as primitive Deathworlders, but as essential problem solvers. Their unique evolution has created something we desperately need. A species that turns impossible situations into opportunities." The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Then the Sylphid representative spoke. "And if we accept this new classification, what do the humans want in return?" Kate's laugh echoed through the chamber. "Want? We just want what we've always wanted. Interesting problems to solve." Speaking of which, she turned to the main display, where a new alert had just appeared. "Looks like there's a catastrophic reactor failure on Outpost 47. Anyone mind if I take a look?" As the human left, already planning her next impossible solution, Dr. Zixtel added a final note to their presentation. "Perhaps we should stop asking what humans want and start asking what they can teach us about turning adversity into advantage." 3 months after the Haven 12 incident, Dr. Zixtel found themselves back in the station's central control room, but everything had changed. The formerly pristine space now bore what Kate Morrison had called productive chaos, a mix of traditional galactic tech and human innovation that somehow worked better than either system alone. Emergency call from Sector 7. The station's AI announced, its voice carrying a new confidence. "Gravitational anomaly threatening mining colony. Recommended response. Protocol Deathworlder. Send it to Kate's team, Dr. Zixtel replied, watching as the alert was forwarded to the recently established Human Crisis Response Division, and update the database with any new solutions they develop. The changes hadn't been easy for everyone. Some species still flinched when humans bounded through the station's corridors, their predatory grace and constant energy a reminder of their Deathworld origins. But results were hard to argue with. Crisis response times had dropped by 60%, and solution success rates had skyrocketed. Dr. Zixtal. Kate's voice boomed through the room as she entered, trailed by a group of wide-eyed alien engineers. Just finished teaching these folks about emergency retrofitting. You won't believe what the Sylphid Junior engineer came up with. The mentioned engineer's gaseous form swirled with a mix of pride and embarrassment. I simply applied human adaptive principles to our traditional energy distribution methods. They invented a whole new way to channel plasma. Kate beamed. See what happens when you stop trying to be perfect and start trying to be interesting. Dr. Zixtel's bioluminescence pulsed with amusement. The greatest surprise hadn't been the humans' abilities, but how they'd inspired other species to think differently. The Galactic Council's Deathworlder integration program had sparked a renaissance of innovation across the known universe. New alert. The AI interrupted. Quantum fluctuation detected in the Andromeda Research Station. Severity level. Impossible. Perfect. Kate grinned, already checking her tool belt. Who wants to come learn some creative problem solving? The room's other occupants, once terrified of such situations, now showed eager interest. The Sylphid engineer's form rippled with excitement, while a young Aetherian already had diagnostic tools ready. Remember, Kate said, as they headed for the transport bay, the first rule of human engineering. The impossible just means nobody's been crazy enough to try it yet. Dr. Zixtal watched them go, then turned to the station's main display, where a new message was flashing. Emergency protocols updated. When conventional methods fail, call a human. But don't expect them to follow the conventional methods either. Access historical records, they commanded. Begin new entry. The display cleared, ready for input. 3 months ago, we called a Deathworlder because we didn't know what to do. What we actually called was a mirror to our own limitations. Humans don't just solve problems. They change how we think about problems. Their greatest gift to the galaxy isn't their strength or their technology, but their perspective that every crisis is an opportunity for innovation. They paused, watching as Kate's transport shot toward the next impossible situation. We once feared their evolution would make them too dangerous for galactic society. Instead, it made them exactly what the galaxy needed. A species that looks at the impossible and says, "Watch this." Perhaps that is the true legacy of Earth. Not just creating survivors, but creating problem solvers who teach the rest of us to see possibilities where we once saw only obstacles. As if to punctuate their words, a message flashed across the screen. Crisis resolved at mining colony. Solution filed under creative use of mining equipment and zero-G ballet techniques. Dr. Zixtel's bioluminescence brightened with laughter. The galaxy was changing, one impossible solution at a time, and they couldn't wait to see what problems tomorrow would bring. After all, they now had humans to help solve them.